Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to IGCSE Success. I'm here this evening with another skills-based mini lesson, and it's all about using complex sentences. Now, in order to write a successful summary, that is 1F, correct me if I'm wrong, you have to use more complex sentence structures. So that includes complex sentences and complex sentences, and I will tell you why a little bit later on. So if you need to sharpen up your skills for 1F, the summary question, which is a core question, it's worth 15 marks, be sure to watch this video until the very end. Let's get started. So first of all, we need to look at the very basics, and that is, what is a complex sentence? Now, put simply, a complex sentence has at least one dependent clause and one independent clause. Now, it's not necessarily important that you know what those terms are, you just need to be able to recognize them and use them. But put simply, a dependent clause cannot stand alone as a sentence. I always say to my year 11s or my year 10s, you are dependent, most of you, on your parents. They provide a roof over their heads, food, money, etc. They are dependent on someone else, their carers, their parents, whatever. A dependent clause needs some help for it to make sense. It also provides extra information for the independent clause. Without an independent clause, it is simply a sentence fragment, so an incomplete idea. However, an independent clause is a full sentence. It can stand alone as a sentence. Really important you know the basics. So let's take a look at some basic examples of complex sentences. So the first one, although I studied hard for the test, I still managed to fail. After watching Will Smith slap Chris Rock, I tore down my posters of Will Smith. If you study hard, you will reap the awards of success. It doesn't matter how hard you exercise if you don't eat well. Despite me having a ton of revision to do, I still can't stop myself from looking at pictures of cats. Now just quickly scrutinize or look at those sentences. Can you identify the dependent clause and the independent clause? Let's take a look. Now, if you have a look at the words in red, they are your independent clauses. So if we remove the dependent clause, I still managed to fail, I tore down my posters of Will Smith, you will reap the awards of success, etc. They could, if we capitalize the U, if we just ensured that we started with a capital and put full stop at the end, they could be a complete sentence. The words in the black, of course, are the dependent clause, and they give us more information about the independent clause. Now at the bottom, help, where do I fit in? And if I had £1 for every time one of my students or students that I've taught in the past omit a comma when they are using complex sentence structures, I would be a very rich man indeed. I probably wouldn't be teaching. Now, what you'll notice is that the comma separates the dependent clause from the independent clause, but you'll notice with example 4, it doesn't matter how hard you exercise if you don't eat well. If the dependent clause comes second, you do not need a comma. So if you start with an independent clause, you do not need a comma. It's really important that you do remember to include a comma where necessary, because if you make too many of these errors, it will affect your writing mark, particularly for question 3. Now, I won't go through all of these. There are lots of what we call subordinating conjunctions, but what you need to remember is that dependent clauses will start with a subordinated conjunction. But what you are seeing on your screens now are some of the common subordinating conjunctions that we often use to construct our complex sentences. So the most important thing Why are complex sentences important for summary writing? So question 1F. Well, let's take a look. Well, first of all, you only have 120 words. This is the only question where you really need to stick within that word count. Will you get penalised for going slightly over? Probably not. Will you get penalised for going under? Probably not, but you really want to try and stick to that 120 word count. Remember the writer's effect question and question 3, they are suggested word counts. You will not get penalised for going over the word count, but a summary is a concise piece of information. So you really want to identify those main points, make sure you cut out all of the waffle and stick to that word count. Now, if you are someone who perhaps needs to sharpen up their sort of sentence structures, i.e. you're not necessarily confident with simple, compound, complex sentences, and you just maybe opt for more simple sentence structures, you're going to run out of words quite quickly, and you're probably going to end up repeating yourself, and you're going to lose out on valuable writing marks as well. Cambridge expect to see more complex sentence structures for summary writing. So more complex sentence structures, and that includes compound complex, mean that you are able to, and this is probably the most important thing, you're able to group similar ideas together so you can stick within that word count. Whoops. And lastly, it will have a positive effect on your reading and writing marks. Reading because you'll be able to include more ideas from the text, and writing because your summary will sound like a summary. It will have that sort of academic style that is needed. So lastly, let's take a look at a successful summary using complex sentences. And again, I've highlighted the dependent clauses in red, just so you can see where I've used my subordinating conjunctions. I've just summarized the negatives of social media. So let's take a look. While social media has had a profoundly positive impact on many people's lives, its ubiquitous nature has resulted in many social media platforms having a detrimental effect on people's mental health. Given that many social media users are both young and impressionable, social media can often become so deeply ingrained in a young person's routine that it begins to take over their lives, resulting in their mental health becoming compromised. As the popularity of social media continues to soar, the problems that arise are becoming more significant and damaging. So there you have it, guys, a really quick lesson on complex sentence structures and why you need to use them for question 1F, the first core question from paper 1. Do let me know if you have any questions below, and I'll be back very soon with another skills-based lesson. Until next time, bye-bye.